Welcome, my name is Abel Sanchez. In this lesson we're going to be looking at how to sort. This is something that you'll do often when you have large collections of information. In this case we're going to be considering first a simple array and later a large collection of JSON data. As with the rest of the lessons in this section, you will be doing this using a callback. So let's go ahead and take a look at the editor and write some code. There's a few things to call out. The very first one is that we have an array. This is simply a list of numbers from 1 to 9 out of order. We're also making a call to the sort function, which is part of arrays in JavaScript, and we're passing in a callback. The callback is in lines 13 through 17, and we will be writing that code in a minute. Then at the end here, we simply write out to the console simply to inspect our results. So as you can see here on lines 4 through 9, these are the rules that JavaScript imposes on you whenever you're writing a comparison function. This is the callback function that will make a comparison between two items of an array. This is how JavaScript implements sort. You must write a compare function that returns one of three results. Whenever you have two items, let's call them A and B, you have three possible results. The first one is that A is less than B, in which case you return a -1. You have a case in where A is greater than B, in which case you return 1. And then the third case in where A is equal to B, in which case you return a 0. Now this is a convention of the language. It chose to require those that are writing comparison functions to return a -1, a 1, or a 0 based on those three cases. This is simply convention. There's nothing special about it. So we're simply going to follow these rules, and we're going to write a comparison function for ourselves. Let's do the first condition. If A is less than B, then we're going to return a -1. If A is greater than B, let me go ahead and line up my code here, then we're going to return 1, +1. Else, if A is equal, and this is the JavaScript comparison that compares both value and type, we're going to return 0. So we're taking care of those three conditions. JavaScript behind the scenes, when we call the sort function and we give it the callback, is going to pass in a couple of items at a time, and behind the scenes choose an algorithm in order to sort this list. So let's go ahead and save it. Let's go ahead and go to the browser and run that code. If all went well, we should get the array in order. As you can see there, let's go ahead and take a look at the source and inspect that compare function to take a look at a couple of comparisons. We'll put a breakpoint in there. We'll reload the page, and you can see there that the first two items have been passed in. Now in this case, A is greater than 2 than B. So let's go ahead and go over, and you can see that it has advanced to the second condition. However, it will not go beyond that. At this point, it will return. Now let's go ahead and go to the next two. In this case, it's passing in 4 and 7, and as you can see there, it starts to move through the array. The order in which it does it and how it does it, it's opaque to you writing the comparison function, but simply know that all you need to consider is two values from that array being passed in, and take care of those three conditions, and the rest of it will be taken care of by the runtime. So let's go ahead and remove this and simply run to the end and move on to the second exercise. So this is a pretty straightforward, bare bones example on how to order an array using the sort function of arrays, giving it a callback function. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to sort the salaries for the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago publishes the salary information for all of the public employees in a large data set that we have within this file. All of this will be provided for you. As you can tell here, there's a great deal of information, and it might be a bit overwhelming, but as we'll see soon, it has a pretty good hierarchy, so it's easy to navigate. You can get here, and if we go all the way to the end, you can see that there's over 30,000 lines of data. or rows of data. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. You can see here that I've given you some starter code, and there's three things to call out when we get into the script. The very first one is the Chicago data is being assigned to a variable called salaries, and as you can see there, that all of that JSON data is assigned into this Chicago variable here. When we move over to the browser, we'll inspect this a little bit closer. Now, in addition to that, I mentioned there are three things to call out. There are three functions. The very first one is generate points, the second one is compare, and the third one is run, which will simply execute the order of functions within the page. So the very first one is generate points. If we go here, we can see that there's an array of points being created, and after that there is a for each, so it loops over all of the salaries within the data from the city of Chicago. Now it pushes points into the points array, and it simply pushes in value pairs. That's the job, and that's also the salary. I've gone ahead beforehand and inspected this data set, and I know that these two positions within the data give us back both the job title and also the salary. Now what you have to do is you have to uncomment line 23, but first write the compare function so that all of those salaries are ordered within the array. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like before you sort it. And if we look at the console, we can inspect the Chicago data. As I mentioned, you have here, there was a lot of data within that JSON structure. However, as you can see here at the very topmost, we have only a couple of value pairs. We have meta and we have data. We have over 30,000 rows. So if we go to City of Chicago.data, we get directly access to all of those rows of data. And if we enter specific row, you can see there that we're starting to get back the information. Now, as you can see here, there's salary information, there's also job title, and what I've done in that first array, let me go back to the code, and this first loop here through the array is to simply extract the job and the salary information. Now the next step is for you to make the comparisons within that new array of points. As you can see here, it's points.sort, and you will have to do the same thing that we did before, that we did with this array, but now you will have to do it with the points, the objects that are inside of the points, each of which has a job and a salary property. So if you do that right, you will see here that you will create a nice ordered graph, as opposed to this one that has a storm of information where it's hard to tell what's taking place, how does it grow, what does the distribution look like. On this one you have a nice ordered set of information that goes from lowest to highest, from top to bottom. So I'll leave that up to you now to inspect, play with. There's many other things that you could do. You can imagine being able to filter by types of job titles. What does the police make versus what do people in schools make versus what does the fire department make. And I'll leave this up to you now for you to explore and have some fun with. So with that, I'll wish you happy coding and goodbye.